Hi, Judy. How are you doing?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing great.
So, how long have you been a member at First Central?
I have been a member at First Central officially. Um, what is 80 take away? Subtracting 14. I became a member
66 years?
like my 8th grade year. Right?
Oh boy.
So, but I've been here forever. Yeah,
Wow.
66 years, and then I was baptized here.
Yeah. So we've really been here forever.
I have been here forever.
Yeah. So we were wanting to talk to you today because about the Head Start that you and Pippi started here at First Central. So how did that get started? Why did First Central have a Head Start?
I've done research trying to dredge out of my memory how this all happened, and I really don't have any information that could be testified to in court.
Okay, and then we won't do that.
I may embellish a little.
Feel free.
All right, go ahead.
The philosopher I wrote my dissertation on said it's far more important that something be interesting than true.
Well, this could be more interesting. I have very little information. However, it kind of is important to know where I was coming from before this all happened. And in researching all through boxes of pictures and information, I found things out about myself I had kind of forgotten. And one was that at a very young age, I was very interested in civil rights, and I have no idea how that happened.
Huh?
But I found a report I wrote in 8th grade by Catherine Owens Peer, and I'm not sure that's how you pronounce her name, but she wrote a book about Mary McLeod Bethune, who became one of the early female black activists in the country. And Bethune-Cookman College was founded by her. So in reading about this and reading what I wrote about, I even did pictures. Like
pictures you drew or pictures?
Pictures I drew. I even drew a picture of Mary McLeod, which you probably can't see.
That's pretty good.
In my report.
Now, I wonder how many people still have their reports sitting around that they could find.
Obviously, this made such a big I even did the author, I did her picture, I did all kinds of pictures. And then the lady who wrote the book, she wrote books about Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I did his anyway, I was interested. It really grabbed me, and I struggled with it through high school because I went to Central, and I grew up in Dundee. I went to Dundee Grade School, and it was a great school, and that's where Pippi and I knew each other from kindergarten, and she was part of my life. And then in 8th grade, we had to divide, and some of us went to Benson, and some of us went to Central, and I ended up at Central. And you knew right away that it was a different environment. There were African Americans, there were Hispanic, there were a little bit Italian, a large Italian contingent, and it was just an amazing place for me. And as
what time period was this?
That would have been in 54.
Okay.
1954. I went to started my year at Central. And over the course of the 4 years I was there, you began to realize the injustices that the particularly African-American kids were facing. They were leaders in the school. They were frequently on student council and held positions of leadership. And yet, when we did events that were not at Central or directly involved with the school, they couldn't go to them. Primarily, the dances, which were all held out at Peony Park, which was quite an incredible place at that time for all of us. It was really a beautiful, innocent time.
But not integrated.
But not integrated. And they would, in January, have the military ball, and our African American friends could go to that if they were in the ROTC, but that was the only time. And I do remember times when we tried to sneak kids in and hide them, and just the injustice of it really broke my heart. And so then I went on to UNO. I'm sorry, I have allergies, and it makes me very, anyway. I got to UNO, and I was an art major, and I was a little bit integrated there, and the university was integrated. It was great, but it was also the time of Martin Luther King, and some of the marches, the sit-ins, all that was going on. And through my, I was actually at UNO 5 years. I worked too, so I wasn't there full-time for a couple of years. It just broke my heart. And my parents, who grew up in Iowa, in a small Iowa town, Cresco, Iowa, they had no experience with people of color, so they were as upset as I was. They really did promote my interest in it, and we would have discussions, and they were very open-minded, and probably for Iowa small town people, very liberal.
So you had this background.
I had this background. So then I'm out of college, and you get married, and I get married, and you have kids, and by then things are really bad. And I was so disturbed by what I was seeing. My kids were little, and I thought, I've got to do something. Now, you would think after all the years I was concerned, I would have tried to do something, but it was then that I finally really committed to it, and that was in the early 70s, like 70, 71. And I called, I think I called, and but at that time I was active here. I was very active here, and I called, I think it was Greater Omaha Community Action, GOCA, which is now, it's still in existence, only it goes by a different acronym, Eastern Nebraska something. And I said, I want to volunteer. I want to do something to try to work in the community to provide more understanding and tolerance. And I'm just killed by what's going on here. And somehow we got into the talk of a Head Start program, and they needed people to start working with kids. There was not a lot of, there were not a lot of programs at that time. And I talked to Mert Remph, who was then our minister, and of course, very supportive. And Pippi was on this journey with me, and we talked about it.
Did Pippi work for the church at that point, or was she
not
just,
yet?
You know?
Not yet. I think it was right before
Okay.
she and she did not join First Central until they were pretty young, but they were married. I think she had gone to Dundee Presbyterian. I'm not sure where Pete went. And they joined this church, and I saw them. And Pete and I knew each other from Central High School, so Pete and I had been buddies for years. Pippi and I kind of had lost touch, and so in a very short time we realized we had a lot in common, and we became so close again. But we met with Mert, and Mert said, "Go for it, and we will do what we can to help you get set up and provide the funds that will be needed to do this." And so with that, we had countless meetings, planning curriculum. Pippi, of course, was in education, and Arlene Michael, I'm sure you've heard Arlene.
Yeah.
Arlene Michael was an educator. I mean, she was a psychiatrist, actually, or a psychologist, and worked at the Med Center. But education was a big interest of hers, and she was instrumental in helping us put together a program. We drafted volunteers, and I think probably, I have no memory of when we actually started, but we finally felt confident enough to open our doors into the Christian education area, which is now primarily the thrift shop. And Greater Omaha Community Action would bring, I think we had about 10 children. They were all African American. but Pibby and I would include our kids, and if volunteers were coming in, those kids would join us. So we were kind of integrating our children.
Was it the first integrated Head Start in Omaha?
It was surely one of the earliest, and I can't say that it was the only. That would be, but it was very early, and then I did find a little more information about, about exactly how it came to be. I'm going to read a little.
Okay.
Okay. I worked with the, I was a volunteer co-director for the GOCA-sponsored Volunteer Head Start program from 69 to 71. Early Head Start programs included several volunteer programs sponsored by Greater Omaha Community Action. First Central Congregational Church was selected as a site. The director worked with GOCA staff, church and community volunteers in an effort to serve at-risk children in an early childhood education program. When government regulations, now this is when it came to an end. We were only here about a year and a half. When government regulations eliminated volunteer Head Starts throughout the city, and rightfully so, I think people that actually had not been properly trained in the Head Start method and what we should be doing, they needed professionals, and we were not professionals.
Okay.
As professional as
That
we
makes
could be,
sense.
we were. Anyway, it came to an end. They asked us to quit doing it in the church. And then, after that, in conjunction with a Millard nonprofit early childhood education group, opened and continued to operate the daycare center after that time. And I think they were there for about 10 or 15 years.
So it continued in a different form.
And it continued in a different way. However, my journey continued in a different way too. When we decided that we could no longer do the GOCA-sponsored Head Start, Mert asked me to join a group at UNO that was studying early childhood education, which really I had absolutely no training in, but I had had this experience. And so in doing that, I got to know a gentleman from Millard who had been working with daycare centers in Millard, and that's when he approached us, and I don't remember his name, but that's when he approached us about opening up a permanent daycare center here. And then I went on to become involved with a group of people who, they were true activists here in the community, and John Else was part of that group. And it was their idea to open up a Montessori center at Danner, and it was called the Danner Memorial Children's Center. And it was at a church, and I'm not sure, I was gonna do research on that too and see if anything related to that is still going on. But John Else was part of that group. And it was a group of people from all over Omaha, and I really don't remember any others than I do John, except for John. And I remember John because he was practicing what he was preaching. He was living on the north side. He was an activist. I was really impressed with what he was doing. And I thought it was a really outstanding idea and program. I did some research on Montessori, and that I found to be very impressive. So I thought that would be a terrific idea if we could put it together, and they did. And I don't know how long it stayed. I know I was on the board for a couple of years, and then I got involved and went off in some other areas. So I think
good work.
Well,
yeah.
Now
I know your kids and Pippi's kids were in the program. So do they have any good memories that they?
I talked to a couple of my kids, and Carrie, my daughter Carrie, who is principal at King Magnet Science Center. fond memories of it. And she said, I think that's where I really got interested in working with little kids in education, even though she was a little kid.
Yeah.
And she said it was fun. She said we did so many fun things. She said it was great. She enjoyed the kids, and yeah, she remembered a lot about it. But I can't say that anything specific as far as memories
Sure.
go.
Well, I know Chrissy's told me before she remembers it, and same thing, you know,
Oh,
just
yeah.
kind of, you know, they would have been awfully young too, so, but they
They
just,
were
enjoyed it.
They were very young, but they enjoyed it, and then the other thing I haven't said either is that the daycare that then followed here, and it was not highly integrated, but it was a bit of an integrated daycare center. We had to shut it down finally after our 10 or 15 years that it was in business because of fire regulations. So all of that kind of left.
So did the church embrace the program?
The church was terrific. They really were. We had lots of volunteers. They seemed interested in the program. We would have programs that the kids would put on, and we would always have good attendance by the church members. Yes, they were very supportive. It was a really, it was a real eye-opening experience for all of us.
I know what, you know, my one time of talking with Mert and things of his that I've read, he really was emphasizing in that time period that the church needed to do programs that reached out into the community and live our faith publicly.
Sure.
So that would seem to be a good example of that.
That was a perfect example of that, yeah. And he was wonderful. He was willing to do almost anything we wanted to do, and yeah, he was supportive. He was very easy to work with.
Well, we should probably wrap up, or this will be too long for people to watch.
Sure,
So,
right.
anything else you want to say?
I just say that I would like to say that I am so proud of this church and the people in it and the direction it has continued to take and the way that you have continued to, the things you're doing in the community as well. And the church has been very inspirational, and
Thanks.
you're living what you're preaching, and that it doesn't always happen.
Well, thank you.
So
We'll say hi to Skip and Cheryl for everybody.
I will. So
Okay, well, thanks.
was that okay?
That was great, I think.